Welcome to the Small Business Show. My name is Swire from Garuda Promo. Today we have Angelica Jones, Vice President of Sales from CyberCopy. How are you doing, Angelica?
Hi, Swire. I'm doing good.
Good to have you. Can you please give a viewer a bio of what you do and what's your role at CyberCopy?
Yes, so I'm the Vice President of Sales at CyberCopy, and I work with all businesses of all types for their marketing and branding needs and making sure that they're able to print high quality marketing materials for the companies.
Great, great. So I run into a lot of people because when I attend chamber meeting, because in promotional product, I believe into what we do. And also in printing, I got this question, we have all this digital marketing, Google Ads that's available. Do we, as a business, still need printing? And what would you say to them? How, would you advise, people compare with printing and digital marketing?
That's an excellent question, Swire, because I think it's on top of everybody's mind right now that, the world is continuously becoming much more digital. So a lot of people are questioning, like, well, if it's so digital, why do we need printing at all?
Yeah.
The answer is that it's not so much that there isn't going to be any more printing as the world becomes digital. It's more so that the type of printing that we'll be using is going to continue to change. And the quality of the printing is going to increase. So when we are printing, we're going to be printing higher quality items. For example, if you're doing a sales presentation, the type of materials that you're going to be printing aren't just going to be simple documents like you would print in the past, because now you can just share a screen. You would be presenting high-end presentation folders, and you're going to have business cards that look very nice, made with high-quality cardstock, possibly environmentally friendly options you'll consider. And so that's the part that's going to be changing, is the quality side of things. So I can actually go on with this, but I think that's as much as we can get into right now. I can continue a little bit further on.
I actually like the advice because, gone are the day that, you go in and I give you like a bunch of white paper, then I probably won't do anything with that. But then if you give me something nice and presentable and in good color coordination, I'll say, oh, what's in it? I'll open it right away. Then, it's just, I think business need to rethink what they're printing. If you do, like you said, low quality, then it goes to waste, go to the compost. But then if you give them high quality value and it's color design coordinated, then people would love to open it right away.
That's right. And then people don't even think about in terms of printing what else that extends to. So for example, when you have customers visiting your business, when that time does come where customers are visiting your business again, you want to make sure that the decor that they see also resonates your brand. So you can digitally print, for example, interior wall coverings, or make custom branded signs to go inside your space that can resonate that brand that you have and make a space that is really inviting, and it makes a space that people resonate and feel like they connect with your brand more. So that's another area that people are using printing in.
Nice. Let's dig deeper into the branding side. I talk to clients. Some people, they hire a designer to design the logo, and some maybe they do it themselves. And over the year, there are some logos that are really just hard to print. And customers themselves complain that every time they do printing, it's print wrong. From an expert standpoint, why are some logos more difficult to print? Are there any ways that you could set it up so that it's easier when you reach to a printing standpoint like CyberCopy?
Yeah, so there are some colors that are more difficult to print. We do find that some companies get themselves into a situation where early on they select a beautiful color for their brand, and then let's say a few years goes by and they don't really print anything because they just have a really strong online presence. But then they want to do an event where they do need printing, and they find that it's very difficult or impossible for them to get that color in a printed fashion. Also with sales presentation material, same things happens. For example, you want to do a presentation and you need presentation books, presentation boards, and you need that color for your brand to print. And sometimes that's not coming across. Well, the reason that happens is because the colors, the spectrum of colors that exist in our computer monitors, it's an RGB. It's different than the spectrum of colors that exist in the human eye that we can see versus what we see, the spectrum of colors that can be printed, which is CMYK. So in essence, why don't you pull up our visuals, Swire, so show the difference. So basically, you can see that with RGB and CMYK, the colors look very different. So the RGB is what you see in your computer monitor, and this CMYK is what we are able to print. So you are creating one type of color, and then when you're printing it out, it looks very different. And this happens because when you're layering RGB inks on top or close to each other, it produces darker colors because the way that the paper is absorbing and the way that the colors are being reflected in the light spectrum, it's not emitting in the same way. And so since RGB colors are already dark to begin with, it makes it very difficult to produce those lighter colors such as yellow or lime green. And adding RGB colors will just invariably result in darker hues. So that's why there's this disparity. So that being the case, when you do start off your project in CMYK, make sure you remember the following, okay? Make sure that you color calibrate your monitor, or at least convert from RGB before sending it to the printer. You want to make sure that you see that color printed before you commit to that brand color on the screen. So, and when you're working with your printing company, they're going to be able to color calibrate their printers and save that information within their system so that when the time comes, you're not scrambling to get that color match. That color will forever be saved for you. And through that process, it's quite a process, but you're going to have to go through probably some printing some test strips. You're going to do a lot of trial and error. There's going to be printer calibration going on. So there's a lot that goes into this process, and you want to make sure you do it early on before you get to a situation where you're printing. So as you're going down this journey, whether you're in the very beginning parts of your brand creation or whether you've already created that brand, make sure you think about these things before it's time for you to print, to give yourself enough time. And I would also recommend that you have a black and white version to your logo, just in case color is not an option for printing, because sometimes it's not, or just sometimes you're printing in an environment where a more neutral look just would work better.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So I would encourage any business, when they are ready to consider print material, to talk to Angelica, because every printer that you go to, they might have a different setting. But if your printer knows your color, and then you know that their color is in line with your branding guide, so stick with that printer, because every time that they run it, they will probably reference to the color tones that you have. And every printer that you send it to, they might have different calibration. So when you actually do the same run, same artwork with different printer, there will actually be a different strategy. And I love your idea for having different version of the logo, because for promotional products, sometimes because when we print a certain color, it will cost a little bit more to set up. There are some clients who are a little bit more cost conscious, might actually change the color. So that's why when we walk into a company, sometimes you see the same red color tone, all different. When the business card, their banner, their pens, their water bottle. So for me and Angelica, when we see it, we know right away. But then, when we explain to the client, you have to have the same mindset. You got to be willing to be as picky as we are with the color, because that's exactly what we do. We got to make sure that our client has the same color. Basically that's our job to make the color consistent. So every single time that you run it, it's supposed to be the same.
It has to be the same because it's your brand, and it has to look the same every single time so that people recognize it. So yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. Thank you for bringing that part up about making sure that if you do end up going to a different printer, that you have to keep in mind that that process of recalibration is going to have to happen all over again. So it's super important.
And I think I would need to point out something too. So, imagine people design their logo for the web. You only do it for the web. But then when later on in printing, in promotional product also, you might print your logo on maybe a 10-foot banner that you display, in front of your office. Or you might print a really small sticker that you might be able to do. So those are different. So you got to check to make sure that your logo, the specs are ready, or is the logo designed to print it really tiny small? Because I have clients that print on a big format, it's fine, but then when they're trying to print on a small sticker, like 1/2 inch, it fills up all the fonts that they have. So do you talk to your printer, have the conversation, and I think will be a question. How do you think that logo will print? I think if every client asks you that question, and obviously you have the advice for them, and sometimes people just go to like an online place and they print it, and they receive everything it's wrong because you haven't thought about what size you're actually printing it on, and by working with a professional printer, that's some of the advice that you'll be able to receive.
Yeah, I think that scale changes a lot of things. So when you're creating the logo initially, you're seeing usually a small version of it. But when you do change the scale of it, it does give you quite a different impression. So I think that's a good point, making sure you think about that ahead of time.
What other advice would you suggest to keep the consistency for a brand? Like how would they wanted to do that to make sure that they have the right color, the right format every time they print?
So when you're thinking about your brand and making sure that it's consistent in everything that you do, you have to think about that from the beginning, and you have to decide on a few different things about your brand. You have to first create a brand kit, which is basically all the rules of how your logo will be used and how and make that information accessible to anybody in the company who's producing collateral. I find that sites like Canva and PicMonkey can actually help you create a brand kit at a very reasonable price. It used to be that you have to pay a lot of money to do this, but for small businesses starting out, you can create a brand kit that unifies the look fairly at a reasonable price. So that's the good news. But the question I guess you're asking, Swire, is like, what goes into that? What are some of the things that you have to think about when you are creating consistency? And you're not just creating consistency, but you're thinking about how you're going to be conveyed by the outside world. And I think that when you're making that choice, you have to think about the voice of your company. You have to think about what that look and feel and message of your company and how that's going to come across to people that see your brand. And that visually basically translates into the types of fonts that you choose, your color palette, the filter of your images, kind of like thinking of like Instagram, and there's like various filters. Even the various filters that you choose within your images that you present, even that small nuance changes the way that your brand is seen. And like the positioning and the size of your logo, they should all be the same. I mean, all of these things you want to make sure to consider. And I think when you're creating a brand kit and unifying all of that, that's a really good time to make sure that everything does stay consistent and communicating that to everybody in your company.
Yeah, 100% agree on branding guide, because like a branding guide is like the instruction for both me and Angelica. So instead of having your printer or promotional product company guess what you're trying to do, you're giving them exactly, this is what I want. This is the color I want. This is the font I want. This is where the fonts are. But I think like sometimes people will have that in the beginning, and sometimes they lost it, or they don't communicate with. Maybe now they're getting bigger. They have a marketing manager ordering prints, or they might have their human resource or the administrative ordering print. So a branding guy could keep everyone in check, kind of like when you have a business plan or a marketing plan. So everyone will be in the same place knowing where we're going. So you won't have two different prints ordering from your administrative department or your marketing department by having the guide. So me and Angelica will be able to read and know that this is what they want and this is how we're going to print for them. So it's exact. There's no guessing. So the last thing that you want us to do is to guess what you're trying to do.
That's right. I think that's a very good point, that you bring up, that you want to make sure you think ahead of all, before you do the type, before you start printing, you want to think about all these things. But, I wouldn't get discouraged if you are a small business and you just needed to start up without creating a branding guide. It's not ever too late to create a brand guide. You can that at any point of time. So that's a good news. And I think it's totally fine if you haven't even created your brand yet and you're still in the beginning stages. I personally wouldn't get too bogged down with all the details. I would just, get your logo going, get your look going, get your website up, and just get started with your business. And then as your business is growing, you can always go back and do a brand guide. That's totally fine too.
Great. So final question I have for you is, from what you have seen, what are some of the effective printing material that you advise for a small business that could do right now?
Yeah, man, these really, they go across such a large spectrum, the types of printing materials that you can have at your company. Some of these things you probably have already thought of. So for example, an identity package. This is your sales material that you give over to your clients. This is going to include your logo, your letterheads, your business cards, envelopes, folders, anything that you need to present to your client on a regular basis to make that sales presentation really smooth. This is what we call as an identity package. And so this is one of the things that you can print for your business in a very high quality fashion. Another thing that you can think about ahead of time is customer proposals and presentations. If you're a company that makes proposals and presentations on a regular basis, think about the visual, tangible aspects of that and what is going to, what you're going to need to create that. So for example, a customer presentation, like let's say you're an architectural company and you have created some beautiful buildings, you've designed them, you're going to want to have a physical copy of that, of the examples that you've created so that you can hand it over to a client. You can mail it to them and they have a hard copy book. It can be perfect bound to make it look really nice and presentable. It can have a hard cover or soft cover. You can decide all of these different details, but that's one thing to think about. Another thing to think about is when you're doing direct mail, if that's a part of what you're doing, if that's a part of your business, you're going to make postcards, flyers, brochures, booklets. Some of these you might be giving out at an event or some of them you might be mailing, but these are all things that also play into your brand. You're going to think about interior and exterior signs and graphics for your business, whether that's the sign that goes at the front of your building or whether it's a sign that people see as soon as they walk into your lobby, and also the custom graphics that are on the walls that people see that resonate that brand as well. Those are some of the printed items. This list keeps going, so I hope you're ready. There's store window decals that you can put up. So let's say you're a retail space and you want to quickly change out the look of your space. You can put up window decals and switch them out yourself, or have a professional do them and feature some of the different sales you might have, or maybe some of the looks. If there's a new trend that's going on, you might be able to put some graphics up of those, all the way to billboards, to posters and banners. You can think about, for example, I mean, this is more in line with what you're doing, Swire, but, T-shirts and other customized clothing giveaways. All of these things come together, and even though you might have different vendors, different providers that are providing all of these things, they still fall under the realm of printing and the physical world. So just to kind of give you a quick recap of some of the things that you might want to think about on the printing side.
Great. Thank you so much, Angelica, for your time today and the advice. And I put your email down there. So if any viewers, are interested to find a more custom solution for them, reach out to Angelica. And then if you like the show, please like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Put in the chat if you have more questions, for printing and anything promotional product related. And thank you again for coming on today, Angelica.
Thank you so much for having me, Swire.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.